Welcome to the Ball Brad Show. It is Wednesday, March 20th, and Joe Biden, good old Joey, is still, by far, not even close, the worst president in American history. Patriots, it's so great to be back with you on this fine Wednesday morning. And boy, oh boy, did Texas have a big win yesterday. The Republican Party had a big win yesterday because the Supreme Court is letting Texas enforce its law allowing police to arrest illegal immigrants. Folks, this story's changing day by day. Just yesterday, I updated you on this, saying the Supreme Court was not allowing Texas to basically arrest illegal immigrants. Now they're saying they can. And that brings us to what's going on here. So after extending a pause, which again, we just talked about yesterday, on the law multiple times, the Supreme Court allowed Texas's SB4 to take effect yesterday, declining. Huge loss for the Biden administration, even though, again, they're supposedly doing everything they can to stop this thing. Huge loss for the Biden administration, declining them and their effort to halt it while litigation continues. The DOJ first filed its lawsuit against Texas to prevent enforcement of the law in January, which we covered here on the show. Quote, the court gives a green light to a law that will upend the long-lasting and long-standing federal-state balance of power and sows chaos when the only court to consider the law concluded that it is likely unconstitutional. This comes from Justice Sonia Sotomayor, wrote in a dissent joined by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, no shock there that they were the dissent opinion here. But what's interesting here is she going, oh, well, it's going to sow chaos, as if there already isn't chaos taking place down there. Lady, You've had 10 million people pour across the border since Joe Biden's been in office. What do you mean this is going to sow chaos? If anything, this has the possibility of sowing order to get rid of the chaos of which the Democrat Party created. Quote, this law implicates serious issues that are subject to ongoing political debate, and Texas's novel scheme requires careful and reasoned consideration in the courts to determine which provisions may be unconstitutional. Justice Elena Kagan also wrote in a dissent that she would not have allowed the law to take effect. Well, you have Attorney General Ken Paxton here saying, huge win on X. Texas has defeated the Biden administration's and the ACLU's emergency motions at the Supreme Court. Our immigration law, SB4, is now in effect. As always, it is my honor to defend Texas and its sovereignty and to lead us to victory in court. The U.S. District Court, Alan Ezra, who is a Reagan appointee, blocked the damn thing earlier on, and we were kind of shocked here because we're going, look, this guy was put in place by Reagan. What is he thinking? But he blocked initially Texas's law from taking effect in February. So the lawsuit goes in January. There's been fighting since February. He blocks Texas's law in February. And now we're here a month later and the GOP wins this thing. So he says finding it threatens the fundamental notion that the United States must regulate immigration with one voice. It's the voice of the people. Of course, it's going to be one voice, but also you have a state that's being crippled here, and they're doing everything they can to stop this massive flood of immigration taking over not just the localities, but also their state. Again, the state can't print money. The federal government can. The Fifth Circuit issued an administrative stay early on in March, allowing the law to take effect while it considered to prompting the Biden administration to file an emergency application with the Supreme Court. And again, they did this emergency one because they thought definitely that they were going to win. But there's no shot that they were going to win. I mean, of course, you have these far lefties like Ketanji Brown Jackson. The lady said, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer simple gender questions. You know, it's no shock that she sat there and sided with the lefties. But it's insane that this even had to go to the Supreme Court on something, so obvious at the end of the day. Well, speaking of other things that are obvious, you have right here, which some of you are going to find interesting, and I kind of found interesting myself. You have a judge ruling illegal immigrants have gun rights, and they're protected by the Second Amendment. So these Bill of Rights are basically, these natural rights, rather, are being passed down to illegal immigrants now, and they have the right to bear arms just as you and I do. So rather than going through this, I was like, how can I basically summarize this thing? And so I got it packaged, very nicely for you. So a federal judge in Illinois ruled that the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment, which grants the right to bear arms, also applies to non-citizens who enter the United States illegally. This decision was made in the case of Carbajal Flores, an undocumented immigrant found with a handgun, but who has not committed any crimes. Coleman's ruling, this person from Illinois, challenges a federal law that forbids illegal immigrants from owning firearms, stating that such a ban is unconstitutional in Flores' situation. The judge argued that there is no historical basis for denying Second Amendment rights to nonviolent, undocumented individuals, emphasizing the importance of the Supreme Court's recent Bruin decision, which sets a new standard for evaluating Second Amendment issues. Now, this is sparking some massive debates among gun right advocates and activists, and some of them are expressing concern at the end of the day for over-granting constitutional protections to non-citizens. Now, if you break this down, you're almost kind of wondering then, how does a non-citizen obtain basically the type of right that you and I have, meaning basically the Second Amendment right? And what's stopping them then from attaining all the other rights, such as the right to vote and other constitutional rights that are supposedly just supposed to be for American citizens? And so what you have to look at here is basically how non-citizens first obtain their certain rights. And then you have to look at kind of what's the limitations and the distinctions between all this, as well as looking at the historical interpretations. And I want to break this down for all of you because I think it's important and it's really informative. So first, the U.S. Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights themselves, primarily enumerates rights that restricts the powers of the federal government and in many instances the state governments as well. So the extent to which these rights apply to non-citizens depends on the specific nature of the right itself and the legal interpretation by the courts over time. Now, I'm personally a textualist. I believe that we need to look at the law in terms of the time that it's written in and taking all the basically the nuances and historical aspects of that time of why it's written versus the other people. A lot of these people just interpret it for present day of like, oh, well, you gotta formulate this and extract that. That's where basically we get a lot of foolery coming in from the progressive left. So how did non-citizens obtain their rights anyways? Well, the first one is you have that judicial interpretation, which I was just referencing, where courts will play kind of this significant role in interpreting the Constitution and play a little foolery here and kind of treat the Constitution as if it's a living thing, and that living things ultimately evolve over time and they adapt and change to cultures and contexts of which whatever you're referring it to. So this Constitution that we have and determining the extent to which its protections apply to non-citizens. For example, the Supreme Court and lower courts have held that certain rights, such as the right to due process, for example, like the Fifth Amendment, as well as the 14th Amendment, and equal protection under the law, apply to any person within the United States, which includes non-citizens, they're saying, regardless of their immigration status. You also have specific language of the Constitution itself, where some constitutional rights are actually framed in a manner that does not explicitly limit their application to citizens, which is very interesting. And so if you kind of look at the First Amendment, it says this: the right of the people, again, of the people, peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances without specifying whether this applies only to citizens. Now, what's interesting here is if you dive deeper into that, there are historical and contemporary legal proceedings regarding the idea of, well, they say the people in the Constitution, but in other places, they actually refer specifically to the citizens. So the application of certain rights to non-citizens has been affirmed through historical and contemporary legal cases and precedents. For example, the right to a public trial, protection from an unlawful searches and seizures, and the right to work and receive compensation are recognized for non-citizens residing in the United States, believe it or not. Now, some of you may have known that, but again, there are some limitations and distinctions to all this, specifically regarding the rights of non-citizens, especially concerning political rights such as voting. Again, my question is that if they're able to obtain such rights as the Bill of Rights, these natural laws that all of us exude and we believe comes from a higher being or higher spiritual realm, then what's stopping basically from us extrapolating that and treating it almost as an elasticity and attributing it to voting rights? Well, regarding the voting rights themselves, the Constitution and subsequent amendments explicitly grant the right to vote to specifically U.S. citizens. For example, the 15th, 19th, and 26th Amendment protect citizens' voting rights on the basis of race, sex, and age, respectively. States have the power to set specific eligibility criteria for voting in federal and state elections, with citizenship being a universal requirement. Now, here's the thing. Just on the Senate floor during a committee hearing, there was three people that were asked specifically if somebody should have to show proof of citizenship to become an eligible voter. And some of them, these progressive lefties, would not answer the question. So even then, if you have to be a citizen and it's a universal requirement, why is it not a universal requirement to provide proof that you're actually a citizen when you're voting? That's the thing. So now you're seeing some loosey-goosey stuff that can happen with this because you don't have to provide citizenship of when you're voting. You don't have to provide an ID. Remember how the left is saying, oh, well, that's discriminatory, that's racist. But you have to provide an ID like everywhere you go to drive, right, to get alcohol, hell, to go through the airport, to go through customs, to travel. Like, why is none of that discriminatory? But when you have to show an actual valid ID to vote, all of a sudden, then there's problems. Furthermore, running for office specifically is another limitation distinction. Non-citizens are generally barred from running for federal and most state and local election positions. Now, the left is doing everything they possibly can right now to sit there and shift that. And that's why you have New York City allowing originally these illegal aliens, these asylum seekers, to vote in their municipalities. And they're trying to basically deviate the law. You are also seeing this from different states, such as California was trying to implement this as well. California couldn't get through with it. So what they do, they just allowed a non-citizen from China to just be on their elections committee. They go, fine, if you can't allow her to vote, then we'll make sure we screw you over by allowing her to sit there and make policies and certain practices that are going to basically affect the elections at the end of the day. It's insane. I know, it's insane. For instance, the Constitution requires that one must be a natural-born citizen to be president or vice president of the United States, a citizen for at least 7 years to be a representative, and a citizen for at least 9 years to be a senator. You also have basically certain employment and benefits. Some government positions and benefits are reserved for just U.S. citizens. But again, that's kind of starting to kind of diminish in some way, shape, or form with what's going on with illegal aliens. So then you have to ask yourself, now that we kind of understood, okay, well, then they're not able to actually utilize that right to vote on federal elections. There is some loosey-goosey stuff, I know, you guys, with what took place in 2020. There were illegal aliens voting. We know that. There was also people voting from properties that didn't exist. We know that. There was election fraud taking place. We know that. The government doesn't want to do anything about it. The Democrat Party doesn't want to do anything about it. But the other question I have then is, why is being a citizen not a universal requirement for the Second Amendment within itself? So the question why the citizenship is not a universal requirement for the Second Amendment, right, specifically, involves both kind of a historical context as well as basically a legal interpretation of it. And the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution reads this: a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So when you look at this, one, there's kind of some broad language here. There's also the founding principle, and then there's basically the legal precedents as well. So the broad language of the Second Amendment uses the term, and I referenced this earlier, the people, without specifying citizenship. This is significant to some because in various parts of the Constitution, when the framers intended to restrict rights or basically the roles of the citizens as well, they did not explicitly utilize the people or citizens themselves. Or rather, they did, forgive me. They did explicitly kind of separate the two. So the broader term, the people, has been interpreted by the courts, just some of them, and legal scholars to include not only U.S. citizens, but also non-citizens who reside in the country. So again, they're referring to the people as both citizens and non-citizens. I personally think it should be attributed to citizens because it was the framers that created this for the benefit of the citizens, but I understand the argument for natural law, a law that was given by a higher being to all people. Founding principles, again, the framers of the Constitution were influenced by these Enlightenment ideas, and these included what I was referring to earlier as natural rights that are inherited by all individuals. And that, again, was kind of through this Enlightenment period where the framers believed that everybody should have the right to free speech, they should have the right to be able to bear arms, protect themselves, and they kind of took that from naturalistic principles. Like if you were to look at an animal's going to protect like its shelter, it's going to protect its property, it's going to protect its family, its children, its own life. And they took that principle, that basically what God created through natural order, and attribute it to us as individuals. And that's where you get kind of these founding principles through these Enlightenment ideas. So this not just citizens of a particular country either. The right to self-defense is often considered a natural right from which the right to bear arms derives. And the philosophical underpinnings, I guess you could refer it to as, supports a broader interpretation of who is included in the people. And I don't think we've really hashed that out enough as a society to determine, is the people citizens or non-citizens? The court and scholars is leaning more towards non-citizens. And that's why these illegal aliens are basically obtaining this right to bear arms. Now, there's some other unravelings that can go along with that. I want to give you some more modern interpretations because these are more like historical contexts. You have the interpretation of the Second Amendment being evolved, supposedly, especially in light of recent Supreme Court decisions that have expanded the understanding of individual gun rights. Courts considering the rights of non-citizens to bear arms basically have to balance the Second Amendment's text, historical text, Supreme Court precedents, and public safety concerns. And that's the last one that I really want to zoom in on, is public safety concerns. One, how they obtain the gun legally anyways, because there has to be universal background checks. And if there's universal background checks, then you know where this person lives. You know everything about this person. But here's the thing. How do you obtain information about a legal alien that's coming here obviously illegally, but we don't know what types of crimes they necessarily committed in another country? Maybe we do. Maybe they're off the reservation. Maybe they committed heinous crimes. We have no idea. So that's where I kind of fall into this of, just because somebody was apprehended, like that Flores person that had a firearm with them, but even though they were deemed as non-violent and hadn't committed any crimes, what's to say that they were going to commit that crime? Or, by the way, they committed a crime within itself just by being here legally. Again, even if you are pro-illegal immigration, like you like it, it's still breaking the law at the end of the day. A law is a law. So I wanted to break that down. I thought you guys might find that interesting, the idea of natural rights going to all people rather than just U.S. citizens at the end of the day. And we also here have some more news. This one I thought was kind of interesting. This is such a deviation from illegal immigration. This is like a massive, massive turn. Talk about a hard transition. Biden's top intelligence agency says cross-dressing makes man better intelligence officer. I love how we just go from this whole philosophical idea of the Second Amendment, giving people natural rights, the difference between the people and our citizenship, how these rights are granted down from a higher being to the actual natural order of what God created and how that's enabled to all of us and provided to all of us, to, hey, Biden's top intelligence agency, like cross-dressing makes better intelligence officers. Look, I tried to figure out like a fancy and fun way to sit there and make a hard line, a hard cut right to something like this, but you can't. You can't. I haven't read this, by the way, so we're going to experience this all together. So agents at the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, meaning the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and throughout the intelligence community were distributed a newsletter that celebrated an intelligence official for cross-dressing, saying that dressing up in women's clothes makes him a better intelligence officer, according to an internal document. If you don't think the rest of the world is looking at us and laughing and not taking us seriously, you are sorely mistaken, my friend. We're having actual officials, and kudos to them for putting their, life on the line to serve this country. I did not. I'm not a veteran. My family is. My father is, as well as my grandfather's in World War II. He was actually in Pearl Harbor. Kudos to people that actually took that leap and served our country. But I don't believe you dressing up in women's clothing is a good image and shows a image of force and strength and power on pictures, television, on camera, whatever, on film, however you want to portray it. It is not a good look, and it looks silly, and it makes us look weak. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden makes us look weak. It doesn't help that you're having generals and these people working in the Biden administration wearing women's clothes. It doesn't look good. The office, do what you want in your own time. You want to wear women's clothes? Look, I think it's weird. I'm not for it. But if that's your life and that's what you want to do, hey, you know what? Keep it behind closed doors. Not into it. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence sent its internal newsletter called The Dive and obtained by the Daily Wire through a Freedom of Information Act request to personnel across the entire intelligence community. Featured in the newsletter was an article by an anonymous official claiming that cross-dressing makes him a better intelligence officer. Quote, I can't wait to read this quote. Let's hear him out. Let's hear him out. Quote, I'm an intelligence officer and I'm a man who likes to wear women's clothes sometimes. My gender identity and expression make me a better intelligence officer, states its opening line. The author goes on to argue that his decision to cross-dress merits attention, given the climate of discussion around the topic and where it sits in the larger conversation about gender identity and expression and professional appearance. Can you imagine the young men storming the beaches of Normandy in Prada heels and like Gucci handbags, fighting the Nazis? Really? I don't know. Look, There's some conversation with the Scottish kilts, but those are real men. I mean, that type of men will mess you up. And the same with the American men back in the day. I don't know so much now because this is some weird stuff. The Unclassified Newsletter, which specifies on each page that it is for official use only and not cleared for public release. God, I wonder why. Why wasn't it cleared for public release if this is something supposed to be so accepting? You know what I mean? I love how we're talking about cross-dressing and it's giving us underwear here. Like, what is the advertisement? Jesus Christ. Was released to the Daily Wire last week, though information such as names of authors are redacted throughout. It was created by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence's IC Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Office. What a freaking name. One, that deserves a like, the fact that I did it without slipping up. And two, what a name. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence's IC Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Office, and sent to the entire intelligence community. Why do we have that office in the first place? Can we get rid of it? Can we save millions of dollars here? And again, maybe transfer that over to our veterans or our homeless people, or trying to just get our country in order with all the chaos that's taking place. Maybe we could do that. I hope Trump gets in office and just gets rid of that whole thing. Anything that has DEI associated with it, let's just get rid of it. You lost your job. You went into something that was tearing this country apart. The ODNI is a cabinet-level agency overseeing the rest of the IC, including the CIA, FBI, NSA. Well, no wonder all these intelligence committees and communities are just collapsing because you have this stuff, this woke agenda taking place inside it. And the intelligence components in each branch of the military. The newsletter comes as both the intelligence community and the wider federal bureaucracy has institutionalized the DEI agenda throughout their practices under the Biden administration, and all while Trump prepares to gut the administration state, there you go, baby. There you go, Trump. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to gut it. If it has D for Doug, E for I don't know, and I for incompetence, we're going to sit there and we're going to gut the thing and we're going to get rid of it. It's going to be a bloodbath, right? And then they'll take bloodbath and the gutting. It's like, you're going to kill people, you're going to get rid of them. Because, they don't understand what the man's actually saying. We all do. But good, he's going to get rid of the administrative state here if he returns to the White House. And I hope he upholds his promise. We will see. But what a waste of money. And look, it says everything that the Biden administration is kind of crippling our military in the same way that Barack Obama wanted to do it. Do you guys remember Barack Obama wanted to sit there and tear down our military installations all across the United States? He actually wanted to sit there and make our military smaller. While you have Iran, you have terrorists roaming all across the globe wanting to perform heinous acts against us and our allies. He wanted to sit there, you got China, Russia, I mean, you got all these countries, right? He wanted to sit there and get rid of and diminish our military. In the same way, Biden can't even get people to register and enlist into the military. God, I wonder why. Why would you want to serve in a military right now, knowing that you have cross-dressing men and also men who think they're women running the show? Can you imagine having your officer or some dude, I guess a dude or a gal, I don't know which one it's going to be anymore because you can identify as like anything now, non-binary, how that works out, no clue. But you could have this person telling you what to do when they don't even have their head on straight and they're going through some tough stuff because they're a biological man wearing lipstick and shouting in your face, wearing a wig, and they think they're a woman. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take you seriously. It goes on here, quote, I think my experiences, here we go. Now we're getting to the actual nitty-gritty of what this person thinks. I think my experiences as someone who cross-dresses have sharpened the skills I use as an intelligence officer, the anonymous intelligence officer claims. Again, if it's so accepted, why is this person anonymous? If he believes this makes him a better intelligence officer, why is it anonymous? Why aren't you just willing to go out? Are you somebody that's like a spy for the CIA? Is that why? Just curious. It's just questions. Just questions. Going on to say how he is now more aware of and hopefully more supportive of my women colleagues. Because you wear women's clothing, all of a sudden now you understand what it's like to be a woman? I don't think so. He expands on the point, saying that he has a better appreciation for how it could be uncomfortable to wear women's clothes sometimes. Like, does he mean the fact that like other men are looking at him? Because one, that's weird. And two, or is he just saying like women's clothing is uncomfortable? And if it's uncomfortable, then why don't you just wear men's clothing? Like, you're a man. You know what I mean? Like, why not just wear men's clothing? Who are you? My question is, who's this person trying to impress, right? Women tend to wear more appealing things because they want to sit there and look good in front of men, right? They want to be sexually attractive. What's this person doing then? Who are they trying to be sexually attractive to? I don't know if it's supposed to be other men or what. I don't know how many cross-dressing people. There's another freaking underwear ad. I don't know how many cross-dressing people are in the military, but heck, maybe it's a lot. Quote, I know firsthand how wearing, oh my God, this person wearing heels. We made a joke about heels the other day. They're wearing heels. I made the joke about storming the beaches of Normandy and like Prada heels. I don't know if Prada makes high heels. I know firsthand. Stuff writes itself. I swear. I know firsthand how wearing heels can make your feet hurt. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. And it may take longer to walk somewhere. Oh. The anonymous intelligence officer also admits that cross-dressing in the workplace causes a distraction. No shit. With the intelligence office. But he pleads that those around him will grow more supportive of his choice to wear women's clothes. Basically, it's saying, hey, they're going to become more supportive of putting up with my shit. Dude's wearing a freaking dress, wearing a skirt that's a thigh high and his ball sack's hanging out. Just lovely. That's what everybody wants to see while they're eating lunch. God. Oh, God damn it. It's Bob's sack again. Oh, goody. We all have to look at it. Quote, I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. Oh, what a lovely conversation. Like, oh, I'm wearing a G-string. What are you wearing, Jessica? Like, weird. When I cross-dress, it still distracts people. It gets better. It gets better. This is why we read this stuff. There's gems. When I cross-dress, it distracts people. Even though it's professional, he writes. It's my hope that we can learn to accept a wider range of gender identities and expressions. I don't know, man. The anonymous intelligence officer went into even greater depth on his cross-dressing habits. We're not even doing it. No. He's like, if that wasn't enough, oh shit. Although I like wearing a bra, I know it isn't comfortable for everyone, and it's less comfortable after a few hours. The stunning document from the House. Can't you read it? Oh, my eyes are so teary. The stunning document from the House of the United States' most powerful intelligence office reads, on top of the biases that women often face at work, it must be hard to be uncomfortable too. Can you guys believe this is real? I can't believe this. Oh God, our country is going down the drain, and so is our military. He went on to claim that cross-dressing also makes him a better ally for those who identify as the LGBTQIA plus elemental P alphabet soup, saying that everyone is better off if they can bring their whole self to work. I definitely feel that, and now have supportive allies. The official goes on to say, I am part of a community that is not just the majority and sometimes feels, that's not the majority rather, and sometimes feels discriminated against. And then the Biden administration can't figure out why we can't get numbers in the military. So feel free to head over. We're not going to, should we continue? I don't know. Should we continue here? I don't think we need to continue. I don't see anything else that's popping out to me as I'm going through this because it's, as you can see, it's long. Zer, transmisogyny, settler colonialism, all this other stuff. Okay. It's a bunch of hubbub. Head over to the Daily Wire, and here's the title of it. Biden's top intelligence agency says cross-dressing makes better men intelligence officers. Absolutely just baffling. Another thing that's baffling here is mandatory bar exam is nixed in Washington state over equity concerns. Oh, folks, it's going to be deemed racist. I haven't read this. Hand to God, have not read it. There's going to be something in here that it's not equitable across races because some races can't pass this damn thing, or at least there's a disparity amongst the races versus those that pass it and those that don't pass it. I guarantee you they found a disparity between races that are passing and aren't passing, and because of the disparity, they automatically gonna get rid of it now. Why do I know this? Because they did it with the high school exit exam. They're doing it in the education system. They're doing it across all platforms. So here it says the bar exam will no longer be required for people who want to practice law in Washington state. God, I hope. Don't ever commit a crime in Washington state because you're gonna have a dog shit lawyer. The state Supreme Court ruled last week, prompted by equity concerns. In a pair of orders Friday, the Washington Supreme Court approved alternative pathways to lawyer licensure. The decision follows recommendations made by the state's bar licensure task force, who knew there was such a thing. And it got who There's all these task forces and committees. Like, what do we need all this for? Like, we got look, things progress extremely well over hundreds of years in this country, really fine with a lot of these randomized DEI initiatives and equity task forces and all this waste of money. So, which was formed in 2020 to examine the issue. That, again, what's going to be the issue? It's going to be something about race, I guarantee you. The task force recommended getting rid of mandatory bar exam in order to advance the cause. There you go. The cause of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We see it again. The task force found that the traditional bar exam, no, I tell it, it writes itself. It writes itself. The bar exam disproportionately and unnecessarily blocks historically marginalized groups from entering the practice of law. There you go. There you go. Oh, we're not done, because almost exactly what I said is in the next two paragraphs. The task force found that the traditional bar exam disproportionately and unnecessarily blocks historical marginalized groups from entering the practice of law, in addition to racism and classism. Into the test itself, the time and financial cost of the test reinforce historical inequities in our profession. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. Despite these issues, data indicates that the bar exam is a best minimally effective for ensuring competent lawyers. You got a dude that can't read. Under the court's new changes, Washington will create 3 experimental learning alternatives to the bar exam. Law school graduates will have to do a 6-month apprenticeship under the guidance and supervision of a qualified attorney, as well as take 3 more standardized courses. Students will still in law school must complete 12 qualifying skills credits and do 500 hours of work as a licensed general intern. They must then submit a portfolio of this work to waive the bar exam. Question, if you still have to sit there and go to law school, why is that itself not messing with those that are marginalized, right? Historically marginalized groups? Because isn't historically marginalized groups, don't they also struggle or have struggled to get into universities in the past? So why even make it a qualification to have to go to law school in the first place? Why do anything with law? Why not just do an apprenticeship at the end of the day? Because you're going to learn more during that apprenticeship than you probably would in law school. Maybe I'm wrong. I never went to law school, but I sure in hell know from my accounting degree, I learned a lot more about accounting, being an intern in tax accounting, and then thereafter as an assurance and advisory accountant, doing the job than I ever did in college. I didn't learn a freaking thing in college when it came to accounting. I learned debits and credits, T-charts, and all that stuff, and how the income statement works and the balance sheet, like the basic stuff. But the really nitty gritty of the job, I learned on the job, not in college. So I told you it's going to happen. Any disparity with the left, you guys, you can automatically assume they're going to point towards racism. Oh, the white man's performing better than the other person or other races, even though that's not even true for most cases, but they'll still push this false narrative because that's all they have. Identity politics is all the left has. They don't have an actual agenda. They don't have any way of making this country a better place other than continually to degrade this country by saying everything's racist. Well, speaking of degrading this country, the left will also degrade our country by allowing people to fraudulently vote. So state officials are now facing lawsuits from GOP once again. If you recall, the GOP also filed a lawsuit for Michigan. Okay, we covered that last time, where Michigan here has 83 counties. At least 53 of them have more registered voters than adults of legal voting age. And an additional 23 counties have an active voter registration rates that exceed 90% of adult citizens over the age of 18. Like, how is that possible? Voter fraud, that's how. So now we have the Republican National Committee, the RNC, slapping freaking Nevada, baby. Secretary of State with a lawsuit on Friday, getting shit done. That basically is alleging the state has impossibly high voter registration rolls. Oh, interesting. Do you guys remember the story that I always share regarding these voter rolls of how people were going to properties that didn't exist? Like they would show up, and by what I mean didn't exist, I mean that in all literal sense. They would show up and it's just an empty desert. There used to be properties there in the past. Nothing as far as the eye could see. You're looking at freaking desert and mountains. So that's one scenario. The other scenario where people were showing up at these properties and asking, hey, does John Smith live here? They go, there's no John Smith. Has John Smith ever lived here? No. So people were voting from properties at which they've never lived before and aren't living in current time. That's voter fraud. There's other scenarios that we found that were also showing up to places that were in the middle of a freeway. The place doesn't exist anymore and people are voting from freeways now. How is that? Where's all this happening? It was Nevada. Believe it or not, it was Nevada when I'm talking about all this. There's tape of people, specifically from Stephen Crowder, so back in the day, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. We're going around and actually looking at all this stuff. So you can actually watch somebody verify this stuff real time. But we're told it was the fairest and cleanest election ever. The lawsuit alleges that the state of Nevada is failing to maintain the requirement of the national voter registration. Do you notice that it's constantly like these Democrats? Don't get me wrong, there's also some Republican areas as well they're doing this. Everybody needs to clean up their voter rolls. Like, it should be mandated that it's updated every single year and accurately, and you have to show proof, but it's not. And then again, oh, freest and fairest election. Oh, it's the cleanest election. The amount of fraud is almost zero. Like, who would do that? Okay, sure. Maybe the Democrats, the party that's always known to be corrupted. Again, the party of slavery, the party of the Klan, the party that didn't go with civil rights. Maybe that party, the party that basically kept people on a metaphorical plantation. I'm trying to figure out like the polite way of saying it. Like, yeah, that party, yeah, maybe known to do some foogery, okay? The RNC is saying that the requirements of the National Voter Registration Act, which mandates the voter rolls must be kept clean and accurate voter registration records, the RNC is alleging that according to their analysis, 5 of Nevada's 17 counties have inflated voter rolls, which says that they indicated a violation of the NVRA, the lawsuit claims. What do you mean, like dead people are voting? Like, what's going on here? Let's find out a little bit more. The election integrity starts with clean voter rolls, and that's why the National Voter Registration Act requires state officials to keep their voters and rolls accurate and up to date. But we're not seeing that in other places like Michigan or Nevada and all these. Interesting. Why? Because we all know what they're doing. Illegal immigrants are voting. People are like actually voting through election fraud on behalf of somebody else. They're harvesting ballots. They're filling ballots for everybody else, signing them off. It's not their signature. All this stuff's taking place. Nevada has universal mail voting. Oh, of course they do. And no voter ID requirement. Oh, shocker. Which makes Secretary of State Aguilar's failure to comply with the NVRA and provide accurate voter rolls all the more concerning. Why? Because there's voter fraud and the Democrat party's sitting there taking advantage of it. Securing clean voter rolls in Nevada is a critical step towards ensuring that it will be easy to vote and hard to cheat. At least 3 Nevada counties have signed registered voters that have adult citizens who are over the age of 18. That number of voters is impossibly high. So you're going to see the same exact thing that we saw in Michigan applying to Nevada here. The lawsuit alleges that 2 counties in Nevada have active voter registration rates that surpass 90% of adult citizens over the age of 18. That number, the RNC alleges in the lawsuit, far eclipses the voter registration rate nationwide and at a state level in elections recently. The RNC filed a similar lawsuit, there you go, Michigan, on March 13th against Michigan State Secretary Jocelyn Benson. The lawsuit alleged that the state was failing to comply again with the voter laws. Shocker how it's constantly a lot of these Democrat-ran areas that don't want to comply. They don't want to do what they're supposed to do. They want to allow illegals to vote. They want to allow people to fraudulently vote. Why? Because these people are voting for who? Who are they voting for? They're voting for Biden. Just think about this. People are willing to do something corrupt. I mean, the Democrat Party, Democrat voters are willing to do something corrupt for a guy that's corrupt himself, Joe Biden and the Biden family brand, if that's what you want to call it. There's a reason why it was crooked Hillary, and then she was no longer deemed crooked, and Donald Trump now gave it to Joe Biden, and he said that was a good day for Hillary when she lost the term crooked in front of her name. Now it's Crooked Joe. Joe's sitting there taking money from China, Romania, Ukraine. He probably doesn't remember, but he's swimming in the moolah, swimming in the cash while I'm sitting there being effed behind by Loretta Lynch in New York City. Can you believe it? They said I overvalued my assets. Well, I'll overvalue something, and it ain't going to be my assets. It's going to be my middle finger. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's what's going on. So, look, you guys, it's March. They're not going to clean up their voter rolls. They're filing these, but look, these folks, the country didn't want to look at it before. They had an opportunity after 2020 with the foogery that took place. They didn't want to look at it then. What makes you think you're going to look at it now? The Democrats are going to try and cheat. Donald Trump better pull off something unbelievable here, because they're going to do everything they can. Universal mail-in balloting. They're going to sit there and harvest stuff, allow people to sign off on stuff that's not even theirs. There's no ID required. Like, what's stopping voter fraud here? Like, hand to God, like, what's actually implemented here to stop voter fraud? There isn't any. They're just going to do it. That's the thing. They're just going to do it. And by the way, they're going to get away with it. Why do we know that? They got away with it in 2020. They got away with it in 2016, even though Donald Trump won. The only reason Trump won in 2016 was the referendum was on Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was just a terrible candidate. Even the Democrats hated her. Like, Joe Biden, at least they're willing to put up with, because he's like basically a dead person that's being puppeted around on a gurney with a drip tray attached to his chin. like the guy doesn't know what the hell's going on. So they look at him like, oh, this is Joe. Like, this is a good grandpa roaming around naked around the White House once again. Like they don't see him as being malicious, even though he's draining this country and just dragging it right into the ground. Whereas Donald Trump, they just don't like the guy. So they're gonna do everything they can, folks, and they already are doing it. Wait till I'm telling you, I would say June, July. Okay, I'll say August. August is when you're gonna see bleep hit the fan. September, it's gonna ramp up. October, things are gonna get freaking insane. And then November, then it turns into election week. Everyone's going to think everybody cheated because, again, Democrats don't want to sit there and handle their business. And honestly, neither do Republicans. But there you go, folks. Let me know what you think about today's episode. If you enjoyed it and you think that we deserve your like and subscribe, we would love you to support our channel. We do have a membership over here, 99 cents a month. You can go towards helping out a fellow conservative, a fellow Republican, get conservative thought and ideas out there. Again, 99 cents a month, folks. I don't know how much that is a day. Was that 3 cents a day? For 3 cents a day, you can feed a bald conservative to get conservative stuff out there. Would love your support, folks. Really, 99 cents a day. Would love your support on that end. Leave us a comment down below. What do you think about the illegal immigrants having Second Amendment rights? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. With that being said, I'll see you next time here on The Bubba Rat Show.